So, my advice to the Southern California Mountaineers Association is be graceful and generous. You never know where it's going to lead. It might cement the relations with the climbers to be. When I first joined the club, I don't know who was there that day, by the way. I don't know if John Mendenhall was there or Chuck Welch, but I remember Jim Gordon was there with one leg, and he hopped around on Little Rock number 1, which we saw tonight. That fellow standing on the head of the other fellow who was reaching high on Little Rock number 1. I remember it well. And if you get a chance, remember that Jim Gordon, well, he used to make a joke that things were easier for him because he had less weight. None of us wish to cut off our leg to get less weight. So we put up with the weight and figured that somehow we came out ahead. I don't know if we didn't. It's very hard to get the better of Jim. I remember when I first joined the Sierra Club, I wanted to be in the rock climbing section because the people were so nice there. And I thought, my first thought was, climbers must be the best people in the world. Here I am, and they're not saying, oh no, another climbing fanatic. They're saying, oh boy, another climbing fanatic. Well, that was me. I was a climbing fanatic, and I just loved to climb all the time. And it became clear to me that climbing organizations need 3 types of people. They need climbers, and organization men and women, and social people. And it takes those 3 to make a proper climbing organization. And I belong to the first group, climbing fanatics. Sorry. And I joined the Sierra Club, and we went to meetings in downtown Los Angeles. I remember that I think we had slideshows, and one of the slideshows had climbers on the High Sierra. They were on these big peaks, and in Yosemite, and on this wonderful place in Southern California called Takis Rock. I first saw slides of that, and I became enamored of it. I wanted to go there badly. But so I joined the Sierra Club and got into the rock climbing section, and then I found out that well, you need to go on 2 practice climbs first before you get to go to Takis. So I went on those practice climbs at Stony Point and at Mount Pacifico. Mount Pacifico, by the way, is an outcrop atop a peak on about 7,000 feet high. It's in the Angeles National Forest, in the mountains north of Los Angeles. And we went there, and the nice thing about it, it's about the same amount of climbing as Stony Point, but the attractive thing about it is that the rock is not sandstone, it's granite, like Takis. So we went there and practiced, and I don't remember whether I think sometimes Jerry, we had, Jerry's from San Diego, by the way, he's in the audience here tonight. Jerry, we had, you were with the San Diego section. It seems to me that we had joint outings at Pacifico and Takis Rock. Is that right? That's right. So we had joint outings. And one of those I met Jerry, and I met Mike Sherrick, who's here tonight too. Oh, there's Mike. Hi, Mike. Mike was, well, I'm his senior, a little older, but Mike always impressed me because he had more technical ability than I did. He could climb these things so easily, and he once did a backflip off a spire at Mount Pacifico, and it made it look so easy. I was tempted to try it. Thank God I didn't do it, but I was tempted because it made it look so easy. And we got to Takis eventually. And the first climb I did there was with George Harr, who we saw a picture of tonight. And we climbed the route called the Fingertip. It's a scary name, but it's not a scary climb. It turned out to be not too bad, even though you're hundreds of feet above the ground when you do this traverse, and you drive pitons straight up behind a good crack, into a good crack, and traverse across to the left. It's still, well, it was my first climb at Takis, so it was very thrilling. After that, I did many climbs at Takis. I did the trough, the Trader Horn, the ski tracks, the mechanics route. The mechanics route stands out because I avoided the bolt because it had been placed so long ago, 1938. After all, this was in the 40s, late 40s. So I figured that, well, I could get by without it. But it took everything I had to climb the mechanics route without that bolt. Boy, back in those days, they, well, I won't say it, because there are ladies in the audience. But they sure had it. And let's see, well, we made, and Don Wilson and I, by the way, Frank Hoover, who's, hi Frank, and Don Wilson and I met Frank and Don at Stony Point. I can't remember the year it was, but I remember meeting you there, and you were more my age, so I immediately glommed onto them. And Don Wilson and I made the first free ascent of the open book, which was put up in I think it was 1947. I asked the president of this organization whether this was true or not, and he didn't know for sure. So I tried. Anyway, it's a good story. What I heard was that Glenn Dawson and John Mendenhall put up the open book in 1947. And John did the hard route, the hardest part of the climb free, and then he used direct aid up the 5-7 above there, the crack. And I did the crack all free, so we got the first free ascent. Don Wilson and I. And then the next step was Yosemite, of course. The first climb I did in Yosemite was the Higher Cathedral Spire, which was with a party by Roy Gorn. We got up there and it was tough, but we made it. And the next time I did in Yosemite was 1953 with Jerry Gowis. We did the face of Yosemite Point Buttress, which was first climbed by Alan Steck and Bob Swift. They went up to the top of the pedestal. It was pretty straightforward, and then it got dodgy, and it was my turn to lead, so I did my best, and Jerry came up and did his best. And then we got to the top about noon on the second day, and then we went down, and we were looking for new worlds to conquer, and it occurred to us, there's one right across the valley from Camp 4, north face of Sentinel Rock. First climbed in 1950, 3 years earlier, by John Salovey and Alan Steck. And John was a Swiss blacksmith who came to the United States. I'm not sure how old he was, but he took up climbing when he was 45 years old. So he was a Swiss blacksmith who became a Sierra Club rock climber, and subsequently, well, we all wanted to climb like John Salovey. The route up the north face of Sentinel Rock goes up the Flying Buttress for about halfway, about 700 feet. And it's fairly straightforward climbing. It's about what you would use what you're used to. And then it got dodgy about there. I tried to follow John Salovey's way up, but I got off route and instead followed a piton crack that led nowhere. And when I got to the end of the piton crack, I realized I was off route, so I came back down and I decided he must have gone that way. So I went up that way, and it proved to be the right way. It was tough going, get those pitons to stick, but we made it. And we got up to where John had put a couple bolts in. He never placed any bolts unnecessarily, which is why we wanted to climb like John Salovey. And Mike Jerry and Don went up the next morning, got to the high point, made the traverse, completed the traverse, and went up the crack above the traverse to the beginning of the where it closes up, what we call the Narrows. And I thought I would save time by going from the bolts, working my way across on friction. Little did I know that I was swinging across willy-nilly and got across the fast way. Thank goodness Jerry had a good belay. I came to a stop right below him after swinging back and forth, and then went up the crack to join Jerry, and we both went into the Narrows, where John Salovey had pitoned out. He'd gone outside the nice enclosure of the Narrows, which I liked, and he pitoned up the outside, where it was exposed. I didn't like that. I was scared. So I went up made the first ascent of the straight up the free climb up the Narrows. And then we went for, I guess, half a dozen more pitches to the top of Sentinel Rock. I did it in 2 days. The previous time I'd taken 5. So we made good time, but we made a lot of respect. We earned a lot of respect for our predecessors, especially John Salovey. Then the next step was, what are we going to do next? After Sentinel Rock, what are you going to do? Well, Half Dome was there. And it was different from Sentinel in that Sentinel was 1,500 feet and it's laid back a little bit. Half Dome was straight up and down and 2,000 feet high. So it was a different sort of animal. And we didn't want to do it very much. In fact, in 1955 we went up to it and made an attempt. I don't call it much of an attempt, because I think we were determined that we were going to fail anyway. No one had ventured onto a wall so smooth and fast. It was the beginning of the big wall climbing in Yosemite. If we could get up this, we would get things started. So we tried, but we were soundly defeated. And we came back in 1957, 2 years later, with a little bit more ready for the climb. and we succeeded in climbing in 5 days. The first, we climbed toward the shoulder, and then went across a blank face, where it's called the Robbins Traverse now. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very nice. Let's see, we got, oh, that's right, when we were about halfway up, Mike started, his camera started malfunctioning, so he threw it off. That'll fix that camera. So we have no pictures of the upper part of the wall. I hesitate to tell you that, but we got some pictures when Liz and I climbed it 10 years later. We got the upper part of the wall. Anyway, we after climbing across the blank spot in the face, about halfway up below the shoulder, we crossed over to the right, got onto the face proper, and succeeded in climbing it. Well, we went up the flake system until we got to Sandy Ledge, which was about 500 feet from the top. And there, it was 500 feet. It looked like we would have to go down, because to go straight up would be to go over the summit overhang, and it didn't look possible. It's too big, and it looked kind of blank on either side. So we thought we would probably go down, but we decided to climb as far as we could, to rub noses with the impossible, just to make sure it wasn't possible. It's a good thing we did, because 150 feet below the summit, we found this ledge which led up to the left 50 feet, got us around the summit overhang, and made the climb possible. Appropriately enough, we named that thank God ledge. I'm sure there's many climber who reaches that point and looks at that ledge, unless those words escape from their lips. Some of them are atheists. There. Now you can hear me. Too bad. Let's see. Well, we went across the ledge and got to the summit a few hours later. And who should we meet on top? It was about 5 o'clock that evening on the 5th day. But Warren Harding, who would hike 8 miles from the valley floor up to the summit of Half Dome to greet us and wish us well. And Warren Harding had wanted this climb very much. He was severely disappointed that we got there first, but we did. Tough luck, Warren. Anyway, he didn't get mad. He got even, and immediately began an assault on El Capitan, which began in July 1957, a month after our success, and culminated in his first ascent in November of 1958. So it took almost a year and a half of effort for him to get to the top. And it took 45 days on the rock and a total of 125 expansion bolts before he got to the summit. We were able to do that climb in 7 days in one effort. It's since been done in less than 3 hours. So we can't claim anything except in the past. Thank God for the past. And that, the South Wall, the North America Wall, and the Direction Half Dome are covered in my in volume 3 of my memoirs. So if I have any questions about them or anything else, I'll be happy to answer them. And Jerry, would you come up here and field questions for me? Thank you. Now, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to. Turn it over to Jerry.
So if you have questions, could you come up to this mic so we can get it on the recording?
Questions for Royal? Oh, such an...
Come on, guys. Questions?
Do we have to go to that now?
I think I need to.
Oh, no, I don't have.
Well, I have a question for you, Royal. Tell us about that first 5/9 cent of the open book. What did you find?
On the 5/9 cent of the open book, what we found was a 5/9. We thought it was we were the first people to climb it, but it turns out later that John Lindenau climbed the 5/9 when he was on the first ascent.
You sure?
Well, I'm not sure, but that's what a historian, what's his name? Starts with a W. Last name, wrote in, I think, Summit Magazine.
Uh-huh. Well, I think it's interesting because you and I did the second free ascent of the open book. And we retrieved the wooden piton that they had used. And when we had the party at Talkies here a few years ago, we presented that wooden piton to the Idlewild Historical Society.
Oh, I've forgotten that. That's right.
But it does look like he may have beaten you to the 5/9. He just didn't know it.
Yes, sir.
When did you and Liz start climbing together?
When did we start climbing together? When did Liz and I start climbing together? Let's see. It was about 1962. It was the southeast buttress of Cathedral Peak in Tuolumne Meadows.
Was that the first time you climbed that?
Mm-hmm. Is that the first time we climbed it? Yes, it is the first time we climbed it. I climbed it. And she climbed it.
You know, mentioning Liz, tell us about, you did the 10th anniversary ascent of the Northwest Face, you and Liz together.
Was that the 10th anniversary?
Yes.
Oh, the 10th year, yes. Not, it hasn't been climbed 10 times. I'm not sure how many times it's been climbed. Anyway, Liz and I did in 1967, did the Face of Half Dome, and she became the first woman to do the Face of Half Dome, and the first American woman to do a grade 6. And Half Dome was the first grade 6 in the United States, by the way. So it was a big wall. A big wall. And we went up in July because we thought, well, it would be cooler then. Little did we know that July is very warm at that altitude in the sun.
Yes, sir.
You've got some nice routes outside of California. You got some favorite, I remember climbing in the Black Hills on some of your old routes.
He's asking about routes outside of California.
There were a few routes outside of California, that's true. There was Proboscis and the north face of Mount Hooker in the Wind Rivers. Proboscis is in Canada. There was the north face of Mount Edith Cavell in Canada. And there were a lot of routes in the United States. And you mentioned, let's see, the Black Hills. That's right. There were climbs in the Black Hills that I wish I'd done. I thought of rappelling down to take a look at one, and Bob Camp said, no, that would be cheating, so I didn't do it.
As I recall, you and Mike Sherrick did some pretty fast climbing for that time. You remember that?
No, Mike, you'll have to come down and tell us about that.
Come on, Bashful.
I'm not sure what fast climbs you were talking about.
Well, didn't you and Royal do North Wall?
Yeah, we did the third ascent of North Wall.
Oh, you remember now.
And we set out to do it in a day, but we didn't quite make it. And
It's your fault.
I know, it's always my fault.
But that was the best climb to date, was it not?
Yes, it was done. I think we were back down to
A little over a day.
the cars, yeah, at about 10 in the morning of the second day. So we spent an extra couple hours climbing.
We bivouacked in the Narrows.
Oh. Tell us about the Narrows, Mike.
Well, I think
He's too big for them now.
Yeah, did you? Did Royal lead them? Did you lead the Narrows the second time?
I don't know.
I've forgotten who led the Narrows.
For those of you who've not been in the Narrows, it's a wonderful place to bivouac. All you do is take a deep breath and not let it out throughout the whole evening. You stick right there.
Actually, we didn't bivouac in the Narrows. We bivouacked right below where the Narrows start. Yeah, in the hole where Solifay left his can of dates.
No more fast climbs together, that was it?
That's all I remember.
All right, you're dismissed. Where's the North Wall? You're asking, where's the North Wall?
Yeah.
What North Wall are you referring to?
He's referring to the North Wall of Central Rock.
Is there a particular climb that stands out as having been the most satisfying climb you did?
Is there a particular climb that stands out? Yes, I would have to say the Solifay Wall stands out. It's the southwest face of El Capitan because it's so beautiful and well named, if I do say so myself.
Roy, why don't you tell us a little bit about that ascent? What inspired it?
Well, what inspired it was our respect for John Solifay and wanting also to have a route in El Capitan that was ours. So Jerry Galvis and
I don't think so. My twin.
Tom
Frost?
Tom Frost, yeah. And I were in El Capitan Meadows looking up at the southwest face, and by and by we pieced together the elements of a great route. It's been called the greatest rock climb in the world, by the way.
Wow.
I didn't name it that, but it's been called that. Not the hardest by any means, but the greatest, because of the combination of bivouac sites and different good rock and position and variety of climbing on good rock.
Was that good bivouac sites or no bivouac sites?
Good bivouac sites. Yeah, they're good.
How long did it take you to do it?
The first ascent took 9 days, two pushes, and the second ascent is one continuous ascent was by Tom Frost and I in 5 days, 1962, I think.
You think? What else? Oh, that guy getting up to lead, we'll ask him a question. Yes, sir.
So, while you guys were doing the impossible for the first time, if someone walked into, Camp 4 and said, I'm going to climb 3 walls in a day, or I'm going to, solo the northwest face, what would you have thought of it then, and what do you think of it now when you're here, how things have evolved following in your footsteps?
That's a complicated question. You better answer it.
I was waiting you say.
What do you think about these guys today? About the simple version of it.
I'm full of admiration. I wish I'd done it, but I didn't. I'm full of admiration, though.
Yes, ma'am.
Could I hear a little bit more about Frank's climbing in the rock climbing section? Frank Hoover. I'd like to just know more, because he was climbing with you in those
What's your
days.
name? Frank was
I
asking.
think you've been set up, Frank.
What was he famous for?
Hey, who's asking that question?
I'm Janie Taylor.
Janie
Who else? Levy.
Very good.
I've heard about you.
Well,
It's right here.
oh, it's right there. There's nothing to do. I guess you can hear me. Some of my most interesting memories of Royal was on the very first time we went out to Talkies. The first time I was there. We climbed, I guess it was a fingertip. And right up at the top, my trick knee turned and I fell. And he saved me. I remember that. I started climbing much with Don Wilson. And I climbed mainly with Don Wilson for several years. And
Well, Frank, I think what you want to tell is about when you, Don, and Royal climbed the dirt spire out at Santa Monica.
ooh. Well, we started to Talkies, and Don's car broke down. This was real early in the morning. So we got in a car with one of Royal's friends.
Bill Durr.
Bill Durr, yeah. And the way I remember, we went up to Mount Williamson, and we climbed up that big gully, and there was snow in there. So we had been on snow that morning. And we got fed up with the climbing, jumped in the car, and he had an old LaSalle, I think. I was in the back, and every time he took a corner, the tire would rub on the wheel well. And I got burned on my arm. Anyway, we drove down to Santa Monica, and there was a large dirt pinnacle beside the Highway 101. And so we stopped and walked up to it, and we climbed it. So I didn't climb it, Royal climbed it. And just then the cops showed up. And the guy was down there hollering at us, and then a newspaper reporter showed up. And he had one of those big old-fashioned 4 by 5 speed graphics. And he went to take a picture, of course. The flash bulb didn't go off. And he turned around and looked at it, and the flash bulb went off. And he fell down and slid down the ice plants down to the sidewalk. And then the hook and ladder arrived. And on like a August or July afternoon in Santa Monica, with 8 million people, they parked across the highway, and the ladder couldn't get anywhere near us. So we were being very uncomfortable. So I think I held the rope, and Royal was going to rappel down the outside, the other side. And the cop was hollering at us. He said, if you lower him, we'll book you all. And so Royal went down. And anyway, they gave us a nasty lecture saying we'd all go to jail if we ever came back to Santa Monica. And so we escaped, and Royal was the only one that gotten up. So we felt gypped. And several years later, we were at a night seminar at UCLA, and after that we left. And Don and I and a guy named Bob Josephson went down there. It was foggy, and we just went up, climbed it, and came back down again. And no one saw us do it. We got away without trouble.
Frank, I think you forgot that it's since fallen over.
Yeah.
It has. It's disappeared. I wonder if they took it down because of trouble there.
An attractive nuisance.
If you want to tell a story, why don't you tell the story about the wine?
The line?
The wine.
Oh, the wine. Which wine?
Well, we were at Riverside County Campground, and there was a strange guy that showed up named Warren Hardy.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
You want to tell it, or should I tell it?
You tell it.
Well, you should tell it because it's about me.
I remember writing about it, but I don't remember.
Well,
Frank, why don't you prompt him just a little?
okay, Warren, he had a jug of wine.
Yeah.
And I was a trip leader that time.
Oh, that's right. He said,
A certain
why
person.
you have a sip? And he tried to pass the wine along. And you graciously took some.
I did, yeah. But there was someone there who objected. I was the trip leader. And the guy came up to me and said, but we don't allow any drinking on Sierra Club trips. Yes.
And you were the leader.
And I was the leader. And he looked at me and I said, well, it's his wine, he can drink it if he wants. And after that, there was never a trip without some jug of wine. I forget who it was that objected.
Yeah, so Warren was the
He seduced the entire Angeles chapter.
bad influence.
He ruined us all.
Well, I think he changed the culture of the RCS. Warren was an interesting guy. He was he was a fun-loving, but a profound alcoholic. And he lived up in the Sacramento area, and so on the way to Yosemite Valley in his XK120 Jaguar, why, of course it had a very small trunk, he'd stop by a winery and he'd get a case of wine. Now a case of wine is 4 gallons in Warren's days, and it was $1.30 a gallon, and he got 15 cents return deposit. So he would come in, and on a weekend, 4 gallons of wine would just evaporate. He didn't drink it all himself, but he spread a little bit around. But I think that was the beginning of red wine in the RCS.
I remember one time we were going to Yosemite, and I think it was Dolt that was in the car with us. And he said, I know a place where we can get wine. And we went on these back roads to a winery. It was the night watchman at the winery. And the cost was $1 a gallon if we had our own bottle. $1.25 if he supplied the bottle. It was good wine though.
Did you get your question answered?
More.
I had a question. You know, a lot of guys around here, but there were women in the early days too, and I think one of your climbing partners is right over there.
Barbara? No.
Barbara.
Barbara was very good in any day. She was, well, we looked at her and said, Bobby, can I do this? And she would generally say yes, but occasionally she would say, I don't think so. So we wouldn't try it.
Well, why don't you tell us about the ascent that you, Bobby, and Doug Wilson did of Lost Arrow Spire? You did the third ascent, as I recall.
Well, the Lost Arrow Spire, I remember that the spire, by the way, is only 200 feet high. It's small, but as I've said in one of my books, it's terrifying in its isolation. It sits out there, and you don't want to go near it. But John Salathe went more than halfway up alone.